Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Warren Bird, Research Director at Leadership Network, and I am delighted to welcome you to our presentation of Leaders in Training, Internships and Residencies that Help Churches Shape Future Leaders. It's based on a research project that we did that we asked churches of all sizes, got mostly larger church responses, but across the spectrum, how are you doing interns, residencies, even what do you call these things? And tallied and crunched the 328 people who responded, and and we are now given a quick summary of what we learned. It's also available as a free download at leadnet.org, as in leadershipnetwork.org intern, and this highlights the different graphics that you see there. The first one is that we ask, okay, why are you doing the internship, residency, apprenticeship program, whatever you call it? And we gave them 7 different options, and then they could rank them based on, okay, what's really important to you and what's not important at all. And to somewhat my surprise, modeling leadership development as a natural extension of our mission as a church became the top choice behind all the programs, and we sliced and diced it different ways, and that was consistently the highest reason. Other reasons highlighted in this slide, second ranked was helping participants to discern or clarify their vocational calling. That was particularly higher among those that appeal to college students and the few that did high schoolers and all. But really, that was widely chosen as well. And you can see the list of the other choices in their order. The next thing we asked was, how do you measure success in your program? And again, we gave them several options, 5 in this case, asked them to rank them, and the highest ranked measure of success was personal maturity in the life of the intern or resident. Now, how do you measure personal maturity? Each church had that different, but that was their goal and intent. And that very much parallels the leadership development, that we're into the people development business, if you will. Next slide is a bit of a surprise to me when we ask, okay, so when did you launch your program? And as you see from here, the majority, more than half, are 5 years old or less, which is in keeping with the idea that this is a new development. It's something why we wanted to dig into it. We found that 74% of very large churches have an internship or residency program for training future leaders, both lay and staff. And we thought, wow, this is something very significant. And this chart tells me and tells us that there are more of them that you're going to be seeing in the coming years, that this is only going to grow. So then next slide, we ask, what is it that you emphasize? Well, do you have multiple tracks? And virtually everybody did. And what are those tracks? And the first one's probably predictable in that it's probably the easiest win, the simplest way to do it. Oh yeah, we have a summer intern who works with our children's or youth ministries program. And that, I'm sure, is part of the reason why that became most popular. But frankly, if a church doesn't have a thriving children's or youth ministry, it's not going very far. And so that's always a high priority ministry for church leadership to make sure is top quality and receiving the attention it deserves. So that's a natural place to put your internships. Then the arts, college, young adults, pastoral ministry, which you see is 60%. People are in the internship program are training for some future kind of pastoral ministry. Next slide, we said was kind of open-ended. We said, so where do you get your best interns from? And we just let them list, and then we tried to compile the common themes of what we heard in their list. And maybe it isn't much surprising that the internal answer from within our congregation was the primary source. Those that tended to be larger especially said the general buzz or reputation of our church. The longer you had your internship program, the satisfied customers, so to speak, your previous interns, they tended to do great recruiting. But then there were also academic partnerships, both formal and informal, and denominational networking partnerships that that was a good source of feeding prospective interns. The next slide asks, okay, so when your interns complete their program, what do they do? And you see well over a third became staff either at the sponsor church or at another church. A quarter continued in their schoolings, which would mean, like somebody in seminary that did the internship and is now going to finish seminary, or someone who took a break between high school and college, or someone who was in college and receiving credit for a course. All of that would fit in the continuing their schooling. Take on a significant volunteer role in this church was another 1 out of 5 people. It wasn't just local emphasis. Some became missionaries, international workers, and some went directly to plant churches. The next slide, we had asked, okay, so do you give academic credit, or is academic credit received as part of the internship? And to our surprise, almost, or at least to my surprise, almost half of the participants said that they do receive academic credit of some kind. And then some give no credit, and then some, the church itself gives some kind of diploma, lay institute of whatever, or maybe it's just an unaccredited school that the church runs. But we were surprised at how many people have some formal way of recognizing the completion of the internship. So then we asked churches, how successful do you feel like your program is right now? Are you satisfied with it? And on a scale of 1 to 10, 7.1 was the answer and the average. And it wasn't like we had a whole bunch at one end and a whole bunch at the other end. They were pretty much the responses clustered 6, 7, and 8, a few 5s, a few 9s, and a few on the further extremes. But people feel confident in how well their internship is at the present state. So then we said, all right, what do you call this thing? Because I think the growing term is resident, and that's taken from the medical model of residencies as your final. Actually, it's technically called, I spoke with someone in the medical profession, an intern resident, in that this is now the final phase of your long internship, but commonly known, it's just resident as the final stages of working under a skilled practitioner. Though in reality, it turned out 63% call their program or programs internship, because we actually asked, do you have more than one program, and what do you call that one? And this is really a merge of all the programs, whether you've got 1, 2, or 3 in your church. So how do you fund your internship residency? We found really just largely the two extremes. One is you're totally on your own. You want to come do this, you got to raise your own funding. To the other extreme of, hey, we use a portion of church budget, or we get subsidy from the seminary, or we got some kind of outside funding of different sorts that will help fund it for you. And then a small group in the middle, okay, we want them to work 10 hours a week or whatever, but a very small amount. So when do you start your program? Overwhelmingly, it's in the fall and then summer. And this shows how tied we are to the academic world and the academic year. And that really wasn't a surprise. And if you want to see when you're thinking of starting yours, or when you do start yours and how many others do, you can take a look at the chart and see what month corresponds with what you do. So then we said, okay, who do you target in your program? Who are you trying to reach? And they are the largest number are recent graduates, either of seminary, of high school, or the largest group, college. And then, of course, there were others that said, well, we'll take any adults, and a few that actually I was surprised by the percent that do children and youth internships. But to me, this is part of that whole leadership development mindset, where we're in the people development business, and we do this across the board, and we'll start it young and we'll continue it at many ages. My final slide is we said, okay, so how many interns or residents do you have? And then we looked, to see, okay, the high and the low, so to speak, but we didn't quite do the full extremes in every case. I was a little surprised that a lot of churches just have, on average, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 interns. Now, that's a hefty amount to support, but you see some in our survey had as many as 99, and some had as few as 1, and you can look at the different size categories there. All right, let me shift over to a time of questions and responses, and actually, I would like to ask the first question. And that's from our sponsor, Southeastern University. Justin Lathrop is their Vice President for Church Relations. And all the lovely graphics you saw, if you saw the press release that came out, and any number of pieces, that's because of the financial help of their sponsorship. And the reason they want to sponsor it is they're heavily invested in internships themselves. So Justin Lathrop, welcome aboard. Tell us a little bit about the internship emphasis there at Southeastern University, based in Florida, Central Florida.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Bird. We're very excited about our partnership with local church, and really, as our on-campus enrollment continues to grow every year, we're really putting a lot of focus into equipping the local church to train ministers and the next generation of ministers. And so we're doing that through coming alongside their internship programs, like the slide you just showed a few minutes ago, and giving them accreditation, which does so many things for the church. Number one, it just ups the level of internship they're able to offer when you're giving a fully accredited, regionally accredited university experience to someone who's interning at a local church. And so that's been the big game changer for churches. We have 30 of those right now. We're adding another 20 in the fall. It's definitely becoming a big passion of me personally and of Southeastern University to return the training of ministers to the local church.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. So
Absolutely.
Now let's go to those who are watching, listening, and let me ask you first, if you have a question, just unmute yourself and speak it out. If for some reason it doesn't pop out, there's a raise your hand function, and you can do that. And I have wonderful support staff who can handle any tech questions that may come up. So let me pause. It's always hard to be the first to speak, so I'll pause and see who has a question or comment about our report on church-based internships. That's available, free download, at leadnet.org/intern. And while I'll wait, I'll answer one question that I picked up yesterday. I happen to be at North Point Church, Andy Stanley in Greater Atlanta, and they do such a good job of, at every level, cultivating volunteers, and many of those volunteers become future staff. And in one of our discussions, the downside potentially of an internship program is that it unempowers the volunteers. Well, by the church so emphasizing their interns as the person we're trying to develop, that the people of the church get slighted. And so that's a downside to avoid in internships. Let me pause again. And if no one jumps in, then Justin, if you want to jump in and talk about your internship development there at the Oaks Church in Greater Dallas.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I'll wait a second here, see if there's a question. Yeah, and I think there is a raise your hand function too. So if someone does that, I'm sure you'll be able to see that, and we can pause me for a minute. But yeah, the thing I think I see with, especially with multi-site churches, and of course you've done so much research on that, that as the desire becomes more and more to hire people with like DNA in campus level roles, this internship program with the university credit seems to be a great pipeline to create, or I should say produce, the type of staff member that they want to hire. So specifically your multi-site churches that have, rapid expansion in campuses need to hire, that these programs are so important. And the university side, what I was discussing with you earlier that I think you want me to point out, is it just raises the level. So at my church that I was at for 14 years in Dallas, the Oaks, we had an internship program without university credit that ran 20, 30 students every year. It was a great program. But we had worked to bring accreditation to it, and a university partner, and in 2 years' time, that number went from 30 to 120. At the same time doubling the cost, it grew by 300-400%. So we can see that once you bring a university credit, it puts parents at ease. Their child isn't spending money to just stack chairs at a church, is kind of the feeling that some people get. But they're truly getting an education at the same time being involved heavily in local church ministry. So that's what we saw at the Oaks.
Justin, what was the motivation for launching or expanding the internship program there at the Oaks?
Pastor Scott Wilson, my pastor, who I was, like I said, was with for years, I think his motivation was more alongside raising up future ministers. I mean, obviously we did get staff out of that, but that wasn't the primary. The primary role and belief as a church and as him as a lead pastor was, we want to be a part of raising up the next generation of ministers. Similar to, use the residency language with hospitals, similar to teaching hospitals that, have an emphasis on that, as well as, bringing healing to patients. Their desire is to train next doctors, not necessarily for their hospital. So with us, we knew that we wanted to train ministers at the same time minister to people. And so that was the motivation for him.
And so, Justin, I did a lot of interviews as I framed the survey and built it. And what do you want to know about churches like yours? And what you said just a minute ago really reflects kind of a twofold level. One is they tend to have a heart bigger than their church. We want to serve the greater kingdom work that God is doing, and by preparing ministers for it. But at the same time, there's that cherry picking mentality that says, and of the ones that we raise up, we're going to glean the best of them. We're not doing it to get free labor. I very rarely found that, this is a way of using people.
Yeah.
But I did find it as, hey, the ones that seem to be the best match for our church, why would we look elsewhere for staff?
Right.
They're already plugged in and bearing fruit. Let's just help that to continue.
Yeah. And I think, the point of free labor, I mean, any strong church can realize very quickly, it's very, it's expensive to do a strong internship program. So, taking care of 30 interns is yes, you get some grunt work from it, but it takes time and effort, money to do that. And so I think churches that, like for instance, my home church now, where my wife is an executive pastor at in West Palm Beach, they're starting a program because, they have lots of staffing needs. They're expanding quickly. They're doing lots of extra, campuses, and they need staff. And they're doing this program, of course, for the larger, kingdom, but then they truly have positions available to hire at the graduation time of this program. So I think it's a very exciting thing.
Yes, hire some of the people.
Yep.
I'm going to pause just a
Yep.
second before I continue dialoguing with Justin in case others want to jump in with a question. That's all right. It's a quiet morning. So, Justin, who oversaw the internship program at the Oaks, both initially and then as it grew? Was there one dedicated staff member, or did it depend? Was it farmed out? Okay, you're doing your internship with children's ministry, so the children's ministry staff oversees it, or was it a matrix combination?
Yeah, it was a combination. Of course, we had a full-time director, but we had additional staff. I mean, admissions recruitment type people, because we were trying to attract nationally. There were obviously administrative people to get the day-to-day things done, student life component to things of when you got 100 some people living day-to-day together. There needs to be some oversight and that kind of thing. So there's several staff, but it grows with the enrollment of the program.
And initially, were you part of it before its rapid expansion? How was it overseen?
Same thing, just less staff. I mean, and typically.
But there was a dedicated staff person from day one of the
from day one.
Their
Yep.
job was to wake up in the morning and think, how are we going to improve, grow, develop, sharpen what we're doing with internship?
Yep, exactly.
And did you tend to look around at other models? That's what I found a lot of churches did when they launched. They said, well, I knew of this church that did an internship, so we kind of went and got the inside story on what they're doing, and then we came back and tailored it a little bit for our setting.
Yeah, for sure. That's everyone I know that's doing this would be looking to what other people are doing. I know with Southeastern University, we make sure people are looking at doing a site that they can go visit some of our stronger sites and go take a look and see what we're doing well and model after that at some level.
Hey, Dr. Bird.
Yes.
David has a question for us.
Great.
Can you unmute David?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Hi, David.
Hey, thanks so much for putting this on, Dr. Bird, and Justin, thanks for being here too. My question deals with the quality of the internship. Do either of you see trends in the quality of internship when it comes to a paid internship versus an unpaid internship? Does one have a greater impact or a greater quality for the student, or was there not really any data that pointed to one or the other?
Wow, that is a great question. I did not slice the data that way. I will do it in terms of the quality, how do you rate the success of your program and all that versus paid and unpaid. And I will post a blog at leadnet.org within the next week that tells what I learned. My hunch is that whenever money is involved, people pay a little more closer attention because they want to make sure that they're being good stewards of an investment. So if we're paying someone, I suspect there's going to be a higher expectation of quality, follow-up, supervision, and being able to speak into that person's life. Justin, what's your sense?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's just, of course, the internship term is pretty broad. I think when you're talking about college age students, I think the university model just works much better where they're the ones investing thousands of dollars. And the way we've handled that in the past is towards the end of their program, junior, senior year, the church may do some sort of matching program and cover part of their tuition and move them into more official roles. We would call them like ministry associates. So you're doing a few things. One, you're helping cover costs of education. Two, you're helping that student build a resume around a certain position. So if they're the ministry associate of discipleship for middle schoolers, of course, that's a very, niche thing. But if you're only spending, $100 a week on that, that's an opportunity for a lot of wins for a lot of different people. So I do see that you get into. But then if you're talking about post-graduation, so either, graduate work or just we're done with school and trying to figure out what's next, I think internships, are going to attract greater quality of paid interns rather than free ones.
All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I will wind us down. Well, thank you everyone for being a part of this. You see our emails, and I will do the blog by this time next week on the paid versus the unpaid. And we wish you God's best in your development of internship or your writing about it to help inform other churches and groups that are trying to figure out how to leverage internships better. Again, I'm Dr. Warren Bird, Research Director at Leadership Network. I've been partnered today with Justin Lathrop of Southeastern University in Central Florida. And thank you for being part of this recording today.
Thank you, Dr. Bird.